Querying an Access 2007 database using structured query language, also called SQL. Access query by example queries are automatically converted to SQL. The database management system uses SQL to retrieve information or update a database when a query is run. This diagram depicts a business similar to Lowe's that sells housewares, appliances, and sporting goods. We will use this database to learn structured query language. What to consider before doing a query? The tables needed. More than one may be needed. Columns needed, which will be determined by columns that will display in the results, columns needed to enter the criteria. These columns may or may not display in the results. Calculated columns needed. For example, an available credit. That is not a column that should be stored in the table. That can be calculated in a query by subtracting the balance from the limit. Sorting needed, whether it's ascending or descending. Grouping needed, whether you will group by a particular column. In this example, the rep number. Join properties. If more than one table is needed, there are two basic join properties, and this determines how the results will display between the two tables. Type of query. Select is the default query, and it returns all records. If you want to somehow edit or manipulate the data, then you need to use either an update, delete, or make table query. In our example that we're going to use, we're going to list the names of all customers that have a credit limit less than $10,000. The table that we will need will be the customer table. The columns needed in that table will be determined by the columns that will display in the results. The columns that need to display in the result is the name. Columns needed to enter the criteria. Well, in order to find the customers that have a credit limit less than $10,000, we're going to have to include the credit limit column in our query so that we can limit the records based on the value in that column. Calculated columns needed. Our query does not need any calculated columns. Sorting needed. Our query does not need to be sorted. That was not a request. Grouping needed. Our query does not need to be grouped. That was not a request. We only need one table, so we don't need to be concerned with a join property. Because we're only going to return the records that match this condition, we just need a select query type. Creating a query in SQL View. We will create the following query, a query that will list the names of all customers that have a credit limit less than $10,000. Open the database. From the ribbon, select the Create tab. From the Other group, click the Query Design button. Changing from QBE View to SQL View. Click the Close button on the Show Table dialog box. Click the SQL View button. Place the cursor before the semicolon, then hit the space bar. There should be a space between the select statement and what you type next. All SQL statements end with a semicolon. Select queries, which is what we need to write, begin with the select command.